Today, I'll be diving into Lacanian theory with the work The Lacanian Subjects Between Language and Jouissance by Bruce Fink. Bruce Fink, in this book, I don't think it's in print anymore, but the insights that he has, the clear expression of Lacan's depth ideas in this book is, if you can get your hands on a copy, it's invaluable. And as Bruce Fink says in the book, only those who were there in the classroom with Lacan and Jacques Alain Miller could fully grasp what Lacan's aims were. And so it's useful that he's an American, but he learned French, and he lived in Paris for a number of years, and now he's a psychoanalyst out of Pittsburgh at the university there. But if you can get, last time I checked Amazon, this was like, they're out of print and they're out of copies, so it's like $200 for this book, whereas I only paid probably $50 for it, $55 for it. But that's the book, The Lacanian Subject Between Language and Jouissance. And I always say this, I always say this expression, but it expresses Lacan's ideas in clear formulaic terminology. The sentences are clear. There's no ambiguity. It tells you clear definitions and clear formulaic expression of Lacan's theory. But no further delay to the thesis. The thesis is that Lacan's explicit aim was to train psychoanalysts. Only those who were there were able to fully grasp the natural thrust of Lacan's ethos. Bruce Fink offers a short circuit into Lacan's classroom. There are 4 fundamental ways of conceiving of the role of psychoanalysts. And these are the 4 ways. I'll quickly list them here. And these are all, each of these 4 points, they all mean the same thing according to Bruce Fink. They're all partial ways of explaining the same aim. The first is that the dialectization of the master signifiers. That's the first point, the dialectization of the master signifiers. 2, the precipitation of subjectivity. 3, the creation of a new metaphor. And 4, the subjectification or assumption of the cause. Those are the 4 ways. They're all partial ways of explaining the same aim. These 4 ways. I will get into them. No further delay. I will get into them here. Point 1, the dialectization of the master signifiers. What does this mean? The dialectization of the master signifiers. Master signifiers that's the point in your symbolic network, in your language. Remember, a symbolic network it's called a symbolic network because it's common across all people. Everywhere you go, your language isn't something that you own. Your language is something that's external to you, that everybody partakes of. But the master signifier in your own constellation, in your mind, and in other people's minds, the master signifier provides consistency to the rest of your symbolic network. All the signifiers, remember, the symbolic network is signs, symbols, and things. Signified, signifier, signified. Symbol, thing. The master signifier is the ultimate thing. So if you're a Christian, it's the God Yahweh, the old Jewish God Yahweh. If you're Muslim, it's Allah. If you're what have you, if you're communist in 1930s Russia, it's historical necessity. If you're a Marxist, it's the class struggle. Master signifier represents it provides consistency to the rest of your language, the rest of your representation of the world. So the first point is that Lacan aims at training analysts and producing in the subject. Lacan trains psychoanalysts in his classroom to produce this in their analysand. I think it's pronounced analysand. Their patients. The psychoanalyst, according to Lacan, is supposed to produce the dialectization of the master signifier in their patients. Dialectization means that it has been defined in a dialogue against the rest of the symbolic network. So the dialectization of the master signifier means that the master signifier is moving. It's moving, and it now provides new consistency, or it was dropped out, or it was moved to a new location, or a new thing became the master signifier. It's taking a new master signifier and switching it out for the old one. That's what the dialectization of the master signifier means. Point 2, the precipitation of subjectivity. So many patients, as Zizek has said, many patients of psychoanalysts have said the number one reason for coming is that they feel guilty that they're not enjoying life enough. They don't yet have subjectivity in the real sense that they can enjoy their lives. They have guilt, much guilt attached to their life. They have a super over-demanding super ego. They have a overly ambitious ego ideal. The object petit a in them is especially pernicious, and they don't yet have subjectivity. So the analyst needs to precipitate subjectivity in their patients. And this is the same. Remember, these are all the same. These 4 points are all the same. They're all partial ways of explaining the same aim. So the first, the dialectization of the master signifier, is the same as precipitating subjectivity in the subject. Point 3, the creation of a new metaphor. It's very similar to the dialectization of the master signifier. But point 3, the creation of a new metaphor. So if you think about, if you live your life by metaphor and your life isn't going well, you want a new metaphor to invigorate you with fervor and the spirit of being. So you want to create a new metaphor. It's the same as dialectization of the master signifier. You have a key reason in your symbolic network, in your language, that drives you. If it's not working, you want a new one. But point 4, the subjectification or assumption of the cause. The subjectification or assumption of the cause. So Zizek brilliantly says this. I love this, what Zizek says here. He says, forget looking inwards to find your true self. Forget that. Forget looking inward to find your true self. Look outward to a cause. Look outward to something that you can attach yourself to, something external to yourself. A cause. Look outward to a cause that you can attach yourself to. That's the assumption of a cause. The subjectification or assumption of a cause, of the cause it should be. So you have to have not just any cause, but you have to have the cause in your life. The cause of your life. Why were you born? Was it to pursue this avenue or this avenue? It was to do this one thing, this one pursuit, this one external cause that's external to you, but brings you much meaning and enjoyment. And those are the 4 ways, so I'll go through them again. The dialectization of the master signifier, the precipitation of subjectivity, the creation of a new metaphor, and subjectification or assumption of the cause. And point 5, all these are partial ways of characterizing the same basic aim of Lacan. He wants analysts to do all of this for their patients. And it ultimately produces a subjectivity in the patients. Appendix 1, dictionary. I'll go through a quick, I hope to make a video on this later on about the dictionary, but I'll go quickly here. Dictionary, object petit a. What is the object petit a? It is the remainder of the mother object in the Psyche's constellation. That's the best way to define it. The object petit a is the remainder of the mother. The mother represents the other in the child's psyche, and the remainder of the mother as an other object in the psyche. That's what the object petit a is, and it's kind of like it forms a black hole in your subjectivity. You're always trying to please the other, trying to meet their demands, you circle around their demands, and that produces 2, jouissance. Jouissance, which is deriving pleasure from working around the object petit a, approaching it, never touching it, but circling around it, approaching it, repetitively going around it, always trying to approach it and never quite touching it. That produces enjoyment, and that enjoyment is called jouissance. But the barred subject, what is the barred subject? The barred subject is your incomplete self. Yourself represented in the symbolic network, or your representation of yourself as incomplete. And we are all barred. I don't know if we're all barred subjects, but it feels like we're all barred subjects, right? We all feel incomplete, inconsistent. That's also caused by the object petit a. And then finally, the real symbolic imaginary. I don't have the time to get into what the real symbolic imaginary is. Maybe for a separate video I'll do that. But it's quite simply Lacan's knot. It's a knot that produces reality. the real, the symbolic, and the imaginary. The real, and they all operate in the triangle. Plastic Pills has a good video on this. Maybe I'll make my own version. But the real, the symbolic, and the imaginary form the tripartite knot, the Gordian knot, that is Lacan's conception of reality. And finally, the death drive. The death drive is quite simply the jouissance. When you're operating around the object petita and you're getting jouissance, and the movement, that movement is called the death drive. And finally, Appendix 2, between language and jouissance. That's the title of the book, right? The Lacanian subject between language and jouissance by Bruce Fink. What does he mean by this? For Lacan's theory operates in this area between what your language is, your symbolic network, how it operates, and how it functions in the world with you and other subjects around you, and how you get jouissance from circling around the black hole of your subjectivity. That's the full space. That's where your subjectivity takes place, between your language and your jouissance. It's as simple as that. So I hope this was worthwhile. Again, the 4 points, they're all partial ways of explaining the same basic aim. Lacan's aim was to train psychoanalysts, and psychoanalysts are meant to do these 4 things. They're meant to dialectization of the master signifier, the precipitation of subjectivity, the creation of a new metaphor, the subjectification or assumption of the cause. These are the 4 aims that you're trying to precipitate in your patients. That's it for today. Hope that was good for you, it was good for me. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.